Welcome back, everyone, to the Presence Podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have Sharran Srivatsaa with us. Sharran is the president of Real, the world's fastest growing publicly traded real estate brokerage right now. And he is a 4 times Inc. 500 entrepreneur, 5 exits in the last 19 years. He is also an accomplished private equity investor, and he hosts a number of podcasts, including the popular Business School podcast, and including the popular Business School podcast and the 5 a.m. Club for Entrepreneurs. In this conversation, we talk about the NAR settlement, how agents can prepare some specific scripts, some ways to approach these conversations that are going to start happening come August. And we get into marketing and personal branding and his advice and how to avoid certain mistakes that he sees agents make very commonly. And you'll see that Sharran is someone who deeply understands this industry and the day-to-day of agents. So there's a tremendous amount of wisdom and advice in this conversation, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Sharran, welcome to the Presence Podcast. I'm so excited to have you on. Welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And I'll tell you the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that how much time all of this takes. So getting the right folks, making sure they're focused on what they're sharing in this market, kind of pre and post production, making it all happen. And you're doing this all, and you don't have to. So I want to kind of celebrate you and congratulate you for doing this, because you're offering a lot of impact and value to the world, and you don't have to. And I think this is a great gift that you're sharing. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah, thanks. And I know you're taking time out of your busy day, so I really appreciate you being on. And I'm very excited for our conversation. And I want to start by asking you about the NAR settlement, since this is certainly on people's minds right now. The changes are going into effect in August. And in a recent podcast episode that I heard you on that I thought was fantastic, you described these changes as a detour. So I wanted to ask you to explain to people what you meant by detour.
Yeah.
And share any advice that you have for agents that maybe are nervous about the changes that are coming and what they can do to prepare.
Yeah, totally. So I'd say this is probably these changes that are happening post NAR kind of settlement world is the kind of the most fundamental shift that we're having in our business operationally in kind of the last 100 years, right? Because this is nothing to this effect has happened. There have been small things like COVID where you have to have a new form, or something else that when all the MLSs went live, you had kind of cooperation compensation, but nothing that has changed it this much. And so I believe that right now, based on when an agent is hearing this, there are 3 camps of agents. Camp number 1 is that they're like, hey, I don't care about any of this. As and when something happens, I'll go learn it. I'm not worried. You have the second camp of agents that are kind of like dabbling. They're learning as to what's happening. They're unsure of the changes and what's going to happen with that. So they're like, they're watching all of this. And the third is a group of agents that are saying, hey, listen, I'm a professional real estate agent. Whatever the laws, the regulations that are thrown at me, I'll kind of work through them. And the interesting part is in all 3 groups are screwed, is my point. That's the point. And so if wherever you identify yourself, it's irrelevant whether you have not done anything, whether you're in the middle, or whether you believe that you have complete control. And the reason for this, Malti, is that the consumer has changed. It doesn't matter where we are. The consumer now is asking completely different questions. So I've been on 113 buyer consultations right now. The conversations are extremely different. So we have to now figure out how to explain all of this differently. And how I explain this is, the destination is the same, but the route is a little different. That's all it is. And what I mean by that is, at the end of the day, all parties will kind of sort of get paid the same. How they get paid is a little different. So in the entire kind of framing around this concept of, horizontal price fixing was the fact that Malti, the listing agent, essentially the listing broker, would get a commission. Malti would then cooperate and share the commission with the buyer broker. That's how this has always happened. And so the issue around this is, hey, that process is considered, there is some optics around price fixing. That's why we're dealing with all of this. So all that we're saying right now is, Sharran, the buyer agent, gets paid by the buyer, conceptually speaking, because I have a contract to represent the buyer. Malti, the listing agent, gets compensated by the seller. And that's how it works. Now, how each of those people get compensated is a new route. And so as long as people understand that, the fundamental thing we need to understand is that the concept of cooperation compensation is over. So there is no co-op, there's no co-broke, there's no, like, that language is in fact illegal. It does not exist anymore. The buyer is going to get paid by what we call buyer representation compensation. The buyer representation compensation can come from the buyer, or it can come from the seller, or some kind of hybrid of the two. At a very high level, Multi, I don't think that a buyer is going to have to come out of pocket. Like, I think that that's not how the economics have been set up. It's just a reallocation, like the detour of getting to the same place. How the final statement, the final commission closing statement is going to look is just going to be a little different as to who pays whom, but net it's going to be the same. Now, I'll tell you my last point on this. Everyone's thinking about this as this is a change for the buyers. The buyers have to show value. The buyers have to show a new process. The buyers have to show all that. In fact, I actually think as soon as you think about this as a buyer issue, that is where the error happened. This is not a buyer issue. This is the opposite. This is a seller issue. The listing agents have to be significantly better at explaining this to the sellers, because the sellers are the ones that are actually controlling this entire process, because they're paying the buyer through buyer representation compensation. So the pain around this is not for the buyer as much. Yeah, sure, they have to get a buyer representation agreement signed, and they have to go through some mechanical process changes. But I actually believe the stronger listing agents are the ones that are going to keep this entire process intact, because they're going to share with the sellers that, hey, we have to work in incentives, and we have to offer buyer representation compensation, not cooperation compensation, buyer representation compensation to incentivize these buyers. So I think this is just as much or more a listing agent skill vehicle than it is just a buyer agent skill vehicle.
So conversations are changing between agents and buyers, but also agents and sellers. Take us into the living room, behind the scenes. How are these conversations changing? What have you seen, and how can agents prepare?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. There is I'll do two things. One, I'll share where the complexity lies and where the questions are being asked. And then maybe one simple example of what every single agent can use to frame their conversation to make it significantly easier for themselves. So the confusion around it is both buyers and sellers are unsure of how all of this stuff works. And the crazy part is, it's not that there are objections. They just don't know how to ask the questions. So they've just seen a CNN headline that says 6% commissions are no longer the norm. Or the seller has seen that, hey, you don't have to offer buyer representation compensation anymore. Or they say, they see a lot of articles that say buyer agents are going away and you just have to work with your listing agent. All of those, there's no clarity for both sellers and buyers. So them not knowing how to ask the question, they ask poorly articulated questions. So they say things like, hey, Sharran, I heard that I don't have to pay commissions anymore. But they don't know any different. They just kind of like bucket it all into, I don't have to pay this anymore. Or they say, hey, heard you guys are in a lawsuit and you all work for free now. Like, they'll just ask these random things because they don't know how to answer this. And so traditionally what has happened is, both in a listing situation or in a buyer situation, agents will walk into the appointment and then they will talk about what the client wants, lay out a plan. And after all of that is kind of accepted, they will say they'll either wait till they meet with someone else or they'll get an agreement signed. That's been the flow, generally speaking. But that flow is being disrupted because the clients don't know how to ask these random questions. They don't know how the process works. So what I've recommended to everybody is to swap the flow, is to bring the contractual pieces of the conversation up front. And I'll give you the exact scripting that I use. And I say, right before we start the meeting, I say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, are you comfortable with how the real estate transaction process works? And then they'll generally say, yeah, of course, I bought the house. And then you can say, you're right, but you have not bought or sold anything in the last 15 days, have you? Because all of this is happening now. They'll say no. And you can say, hey, there are 3 agreements that govern a real estate transaction. That is the frame, right? There are 3 agreements that govern a real estate transaction. Are you familiar with them? Oh, sort of. Yeah, let me actually walk you through it. Put it on the table. Take the listing agreement, put it on the table, and say, this is a listing agreement. This is between the seller, you, and the listing agent, that's me. You are hiring me exclusively to represent you, to get you a offer that you want at a price that you want, at the terms that you want. Then they'll nod their heads and they feel good about it. Then you say the second party is, this is a buyer representation agreement. Sometimes it's called a buyer broker agreement or a buyer agency agreement, but this is a document between the buyer and the buyer's agent. This gives a formal contractual relationship between the buyer agent and the buyer to help them find a home similar to ours. And the third, put the third agreement on the table. This is a purchase agreement. This is what brings the buyer and the seller together to agree upon terms. And this is the final thing that we're actually looking for. And I actually show them the contract. this is the offer, this is the price, this is the result. If we do our job as a listing agent marketing the property well, we get more of these buyer, purchase agreements. Can I show you what this looks like? And then you walk through the purchase agreement. Now, what you've done is you've contractualized everything up front, because then at the end, when you say, hey, can I sign a buyer representation agreement or a listing agreement, they know what the contract is and why it's in place. And everything that you talk about inside of the appointment is in service of getting that contract signed. So it's not like a new legal agreement. You've already framed it up front. So when you just do that, it makes the entire process so much softer, because they know at the end of the day that you are very contractually savvy, and you're not just going to say, I'm just going to market your home. There's a lot more to it than just that framing alone allows for the conversation to go a lot smoother.
I love that. That's a great script. Who are the winners and losers in these changes?
The skilled agents are the winners, and the apathetic agents are the losers. And so for the folks that think, I've been doing this all this while, who are you NAR, who are you MLS, who are you DOJ, CFPB to tell me to change? Like, I see a lot of those, which is very interesting. It's like, hey, if our seller wants me to pay me that, who are you to tell me? But that's not the laws anymore. So I see a lot of agents fighting this. And so but here's the crazy part, Multi, is that a brand new agent in the business right now and a veteran agent in the business right now, unfortunately, on day one of August 17th, are on the same playing field. They're exactly the same. Whoever can learn the skill faster is going to win faster. So all I would offer is, if we are all going to have to go back to school for a little bit, me included, we're all going to have to know the new processes and the new forms and how they all work. The faster we can learn this, the faster we have the skill around this, the faster it creates separation season from everyone else. So I don't think agents are going to leave the business. I just think that they're going to be less skilled, so they're going to get less deals, so they're going to get trouble more, so they can't actually win more. So if there is any time to focus on your skill, there's any time to talk to your coach, there's any time to work with great companies like yours to show proof on marketing and how you actually do things, if there's any time to like have a mastermind group and like role play your ideas, this is the time, because the next 2, 3, 4 months or the rest of the year of skill building will literally change how you do business for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And so much of this is the ability to communicate to the market what you do and to provide certainty in this uncertain environment where consumers are figuring things out. And one thing we talk about with our clients is the importance of a brand. I mean, it's always been important, but it is especially important now if buyers are having more conversations, if they're interviewing multiple agents. Now you got a situation where if you can communicate your value proposition, if you can learn those skills to have those conversations, and you have a stronger brand, you're likely going to win more often than not. So I see it very similarly, and it's what I'm hearing from agents as well.
Well, I'll say one thing, and this is very luxury presence focused, right? Like take an example of, I think you nailed the brand building component, because even a client in today's market is going to say, oh, great, I met with Sharran, I'm going to go Google him, right? Like they're going to go do that. But what people are thinking about is they're working on their language patterns and like trying to show value. And there's a lot of what gurus are saying right now is, hey, show value. But 99% of the agents are like, oh, I put up signs, I call my clients, I put you in my car, I give you like tours, like all of that's interesting, but that doesn't show value. What I want to offer is this idea, when someone says value, what we should be thinking is 3 words: show, flow, demo. The show is, hey, what can I show to prove to you what I'm saying is the right thing? The second is the flow. What kind of workflow can I show that, hey, when you click this, this happens. When you click this, that happens. Let me show you the workflow. And the third is, hey, can I actually demonstrate what I've already done? So if like one of your clients should, like we are your clients, one of your clients should do this. They should be like, hey, let me show you an example. This is our marketing portal. This is what we do when we launch a property. So when you show the proof around it, that is what shows value. Value is not saying, here's the 72 things that we do. Value is proving and validating that. So when they can show like your entire kind of website ecosystem, when they can show the flow of, hey, when someone goes on the site, it automatically gets a pixel. When the pixel happens, it automatically, so they show the flow around it. This is what we do for open houses, etc. And then they can say, hey, here's a demo. Imagine there was a QR code on a sign. A lot of people think that the QR code on a sign is a cool thing to have. But Mr. and Mrs. Client, let me show you what happens for us. If a consumer signs this QR code, they automatically get dropped on our luxury presence site. The luxury presence site automatically pixels them. Then our AI bot picks it up, so they can show the demo of it. When you like show flow demo, value is visible, value is tangible, value is proven. And so to me, a lot of this is proof. And I think what you guys have built from an ecosystem perspective allows agents to prove their value, not just talk about their value. And that's, I think, a really powerful thing.
One thing that stands out to me just listening to you describe this, and I've listened to a number of your podcasts, and it always strikes me how comfortable and willing you are to go into the details of the specific scripts, the email template, the know-how of what problems the agent's facing and what could they do to solve those problems. And I have to remind people listening to this, you are the president of a public company, right? You have a tremendously busy day. And I think it is very unique that you are this much in the detail. I don't know a lot of public company CEOs or presidents that are that much in the details. And so my question for you is, knowing that this is a deliberate priority that you set for yourself, why have you set that priority, and how do you actually stay in the details to this extent?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. The interesting part about people, I think, misconstrue leadership. And to me, we have at this time a little over 20,000 agents, and you will hear me say this often on calls and videos, etc. I say, hey, my name is Sharran Srivatsaa. I serve as the president of Real. Operative word serve, right? That's important. And all that it means is that I work for you. And so I have 20,000 bosses. That's how I think about it. And the interesting part there is the way I serve our agents is that I need to be able to do the things that they're doing. If not, I don't have perspective. So I can very easily sit in the ivory tower and say, cool, hey, let's hire a marketing agency that does that. Let's hire in a firm that does that. But even when we were working on our partnership, I was like, this makes sense for so many reasons, because I can then take all the features of luxury presence and I can actually share how an agent can use it. Because what an agent sees is how much does it cost? They don't see how they can actually use it. And so to me, a lot of it is, if I can't see, feel, do the things in the trenches, how are we as a company going to innovate on ideas things that people actually work on? That is the kind of the key part, right? Especially, I also know that a lot of our agents are extremely hardworking and they get stuck. They're like, man, I should send an email to my clients regarding blank. And then they'll start with a blank screen and they want to send it, but then they get distracted. They're like, man, this is not my forte. But instead, if they had a starting point with a script or a piece of marketing strategy or whatever that they can get inspiration from, they can move quickly from it. And I'll give you a crazy example. Ever since this NAR lawsuit stuff happened, I was spending a lot of times with our agents in the living room. So if there's a our friend Kofi. So if there's an appointment and Kofi's like, hey, I have a $13 million listing appointment, I'm like, dude, I'll go with you on the appointment. I don't take any economics or anything like that. I'm just there as a support system for it, but I can see all the questions that are being asked and the concerns that are being voiced. And that allows me to say, wow, the last 10 clients kept asking us the same question about NAR, or the last 10 clients kept asking the same thing about pricing. Wouldn't it be amazing? That's what the market is asking for right now. We should probably develop a framework to discuss pricing, and I should probably teach to everybody, because that's what the world's asking for. And I think that in the trenches knowledge is extremely, extremely helpful. It also allows me to challenge age-old beliefs, right? So something that was taught 30 years ago is not valuable at all today. And not for, it may have been valuable now, but the world has changed. And so I'm like, wow, that language pattern or that script didn't quite work. I saw it didn't land. Can we try something different? And I think that's really powerful. So I spend a lot of my time in the Slack channels of a lot of our big teams, because I can see their calls and what they're doing on strategy wise. I'm in the appointments on the bigger complex ones, so I can see what the clients are asking. And that allows us to inform the partners that we choose to work with, the strategies that we're picking. Otherwise, like, what's the job? Like, the job's not to be like, oh, we're cool and go to NASDAQ. I think the job is to help our agents win in a very nuanced way. But Maldi, I'll give you this last part. I think you're very hands-on. Like, you understand, like, if I told you to give us a tour of the platform, you could do it better than everyone else at the company because you are so into it. And it's the same for me. And showing, I call it, the greatness is in the granularity. knowing all the pieces of the puzzle. We are hired not to market a property. We are hired to actually get them from point A to point B. A home buyer, I always say this is a cardinal rule of real estate. A seller is looking for a buyer and a buyer is looking for a house. That's it. Like, we're overcomplicating everything else. If the seller is looking for a buyer and a buyer is looking for a house, there is no mention of an agent or a marketing plan or a, or a pricing strat. None of that is in there. Our job is to compress all the complexity and show them that we can do it. So they're hiring us for our skill and our details. And if I can't have that repertoire of skill and details, then I'm letting our 20,000 plus agents down. So I spend a lot of time just like getting in the trenches and figuring out how they can do it better. And that allows us to innovate on the priorities that we choose.
That's inspiring and it's working. 20,000 agents. Congrats on that. I believe you're the fastest growing brokerage right now.
Yes.
And prior to Real, you led another company, Talus Properties. You grew that tenfold in 5 years. So you've done it multiple times over. What would you say are the most important factors to grow a business exponentially? And what are some takeaways for people maybe starting out or earlier in their journey who want to scale a small business or a small team?
It's a tough one because there's not a lot of context, but I will bubble up some broader ideas. I think we're in the world today of creating goodwill in the marketplace, and that's it's very easy for me to say, hey, you get some people, some strategy, like that's not it, right? Creating goodwill in the marketplace is a really powerful sentiment, and internally we call that giving it all away. So our growth strategy is giving it all away, which means Sharran has an idea, the team has an idea, we build a couple of marketing materials, we build, like, whatever we build, whatever we do, we don't, like, there's very few things that we have behind a paywall or behind, access key. Our job is to be like, hey, what can we build that can give it all away? Like, that's kind of number one. I think industries can do that in so many different industries, but showing it and giving it all away is a really powerful thing, because the first interaction that people have with you is a goodwill based interaction. Otherwise, they're like, I want to talk to this guy. He's trying to sell me something. I'm like, hey, you don't have to buy anything from me. Here's all of this. So I get to show up with goodwill. I internally, Multi, I call this the Santa effect. Everyone loves Santa. Why? Right? Because he shows up with gifts. There's insane goodwill, right? So that's kind of number one. The second is, for some reason, our industry has this rep of disparaging the competition, and I am not a fan of it because I believe that different brokerages and companies exist for different reasons. And there are agents right now in a different business model of a company, which I know is not good for them or not the most optimal, but they chose that for a reason. Maybe there's a relationship with a broker owner manager. Maybe they like it, their firm and their marketplace. Maybe they like the office space. It's different. It works for them. So I'm actually a big fan of, I don't even think of our world as competitors. They're peers, right? Different agents choose to go to different models because it's the right fit for them. So disparaging a model or a leader, or especially disparaging people, I think it's really, it's in poor taste. And which is why I'd say most of the leaders of most of the companies are friends of mine. And so we can actually, I always tell them, hey, if our agents do anything strange, just text me and I'll have them take it down, or I'll have them solve it. So we can solve a lot of things by being friendly. So number two is, by the way, we get attacked often just because of our growth. We get attacked often. And I internally would go to our internal community and be like, listen, I saw this post. Do not respond. This is not worth it. Just do not respond, because that is not who we are. That's not a work hard, be kind culture. So like, I'd say that's number two, is don't disparage the competition. I'd say number three is, we really have to work on our skills. And I mean, just like you, if I talk to an agent, I can sit down with a team of 3 or a team of 30 or a team of 300, and I can show them how to make more money, how to have better life, how to double their income. I can say, hey, tell me what you're doing for lead generation. Tell me what you're doing on conversion. Let me listen to one of your Zillow Flex calls. I can do that. And that allows me to be an operator with them, as opposed to just saying, hey, you should talk to my team. And so I think a lot of leaders just say, oh, this is cool, I'm a visionary, you should talk to my team. And that's interesting, but what it does is it like breaks the bond between you and how you can help the person. And I think that's super interesting. But the last but not least, I randomly came up with this quote, and I said, and I think you'll appreciate this because you're in this game, which is a leader without a media platform in today's world is like a samurai without a sword. right? It's just, you have no media platform. And people ask me why. And I'll tell you why. And I'm curious what you think about this. In today's world, if you have a platform, a media platform, I'm sorry, I've had a chance to build this over the last 10 years, but if you have a media platform in today's world, I think you can operationalize a lot of generosity. I think you can give advice. I think you can share ideas. I think you can call out things that are happening. I think you can help the world a lot more because you have distribution for your ideas. And I think that's super important. If you don't have that, you can be a super good guy or gal or leader and with great ideas, but nobody in the world knows it. No, you can't help anybody with it. And that's why I work really hard on kind of the media platform stuff, because I'm like, if I can grow my email list, if I can grow my platform, if I can have great landing pages, if I can show all of this, I can operationalize generosity where I can give back in a lot of ways. And so I don't think in today's world, like, dude, just take Elon, right? I can guarantee that most people listening right now cannot name another car company CEO. Like, just, they can't even name one. They can't even name one, right? And so even though he's controversial and all of that, his brand, his platform reach is able to get so much, so much information out there, whatever the case may be. And I think the platform reach is really, really important. So I believe a big part of why we are doing okay in today's marketplace is that we have media reach. And that media is, we're in on the screens, on the stages of people, and we're able to share ideas with them for them to do better. Now, if they choose to come to Real, great. If they don't choose to come to Real, at least it plants the idea that, hey, Sharran and Real have been good to me, and they've kind of deployed goodwill, so I have good affinity with them. And the more we can do that in today's marketplace, I think the easier it becomes.
Yeah, I absolutely think having a media platform is a competitive advantage, and it is one of the few ways that you can future-proof your business. Obviously, lowers customer acquisition costs. It puts you in a position where you can get your message out. I think that's true for every business. And you touched on the goodwill part of this, which I think is good advice generally for how you run your business, but it's especially good advice for how to approach marketing. This has been talked about a lot, just giving away the value for free upfront, giving the free downloadables, creating the content that is useful, giving it away for free, and reaping the benefits long term. I think that's still a fairly rare mindset, even now, and it is when you do it, when you have that long term mindset, it works extremely well. So I would echo everything you said.
I'll share another tactical idea in which, so I actually have my speaking coach shared this with me, which I really love, and I actually challenged him on it. He's like, "Hey, Sharran, he's like, you're on a lot of stages. You can build your email list and get a lot of leads." So he said to me, he goes, "Hey, right when you start a presentation on stage, put a QR code and have people kind of register and get your slides, etc." Right? So I did that the first time, and I saw the look in the audience face, Malti. They were excited that I was giving them all the slides, but it was so kludgy, right? Because they would take a scan, then they would enter information, and so now in my first 3 minutes, I've lost them. I've broken rapport with them. So I said, I have a different idea. I now, in almost all my presentations, I get on stage and I'm like, "Hey guys, grab your phones. I know you're not allowed to grab your phones. Here's a QR code. There's no opt-in. There's no email address. There's no DM me on Instagram. There's no sign up. There's nothing. You click the slides. You will get the PDF right now because I just want you to focus on me." And then I say, "Hey, if somebody got it, can you just say got it?" And the entire 1,000-person audience goes, "Got it." And so now I'm in rapport, right? And the cool part there is when my coach asked me, "Why did you do that?" I said to him, which maybe you can comment on this. I said to him, the idea is not for me to get a lead. The idea is for me to have something what I call time on brand. They are with me for 45 minutes on that keynote or what have you. I don't need a lead after that. If I can't impress them so much in a 45-minute period that they don't remember my name and they don't download my stuff and they don't follow me on Instagram, they don't do all of that, I screwed up. I was not good enough. And they spend so much time on my brand. I want to just lead with goodwill in the first 3 minutes. Otherwise, they're like, this dude showed up on stage and the first thing he wants is to squeeze me for a lead, right? So just moving the free line and saying time on brand is more important than a lead that I generate. That media goodwill is more important. That completely changed my mindset. So now in all my presentations, I've never asked for a squeeze. I'm just like, here's everything, right? And that kind of changed how I think about it.
Yeah. Great mindset to have, and good segue. Last fall, we were together at the Rise conference, and I watched you on stage, and I uh, I don't think I've seen this type of energy and excitement in a crowd at a real estate conference. People were jumping up and down and had almost like a Tony Robbins vibe to it. And I wanted to ask you, because it's clear that there is something really special about the culture that you've built, both on your team, the people on stage, but also in the audience, the agents. They were really excited to be there. So my question for you is, what do you do to build this type of excitement, energy, and culture?
Dude, it's really hard. I'll tell you how we've kind of approached it, and it may be different things for different people. Out of our 20,000-ish agents as of today, I probably know 17,000 plus of them personally. And I think that's helpful in a lot of ways, because when every single day when new agents join us, I look at the list, I click on their names, I look at their profiles, I see what areas they serve. Now, I have a little bit of a advantage because I have a decent memory for that stuff, so it makes me connected. Also, when they show up on Zooms, I say, oh, it says Valley, it says Multi, it says Sharran. I like call them out on the Zoom, so I have this rapport and relationship. The power of the media platform is where this is really powerful, because they will tag me and comment on my stuff. So now I get to see them and interact with them on Instagram and Facebook and all the other platforms. So now you have more kind of one-on-one interaction with these people. So I'd say if you ask most of our agents, they'll say, hey, I know Sharran really well. And that's a really good thing, because I roughly get 1,000 to 2,000 DMs a week, and I answer all of them personally, because that's the only way to kind of build relationship, right? So it takes some time, and some people don't see it as a revenue generating thing to do. I don't see it as a revenue generating thing, but I see it as a rapport building thing for me to do. So I believe that there are two big things that drive culture, and that is cadence and results. And cadence for me is if every quarter I showed up and I did an all hands meeting and I said, this is the vision of the company, I have 4 touches with my group. 4. But if I can be 3 times a day on Instagram, 2 times a day on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, inside our community, if wherever they look, they see me, I just get this cadence. This cadence is like, man, Sharran's always in my life, right? And I think that's the feeling overall. The cadence is really powerful, because now the more they see you, the more familiarity they have with you. And it's a very understated benefit of creating content, and especially in a digital world, having all of this, right? But that's not enough. I think the cadence is one part. Cadence creates the culture because they're constantly with you, but you got to get results. I think people will say, cool, I like Sharran, I'm going to stay for a while, but man, nothing's worked for me for 18 months. They're going to bounce. So our combination of, cadence and results is really good, which is why I force myself to like learn stuff in the trenches, because if I can't give a group of agents an idea that they can go do and get a result, they're like, man, Sharran gave me this idea, or Will gave me this idea. I went in and I got this result. I feel good. Now they associate that result with us being together. And that's why you see that level of like love on stage, because it's a very warm room, right? Like I could literally talk gibberish for 45 minutes and that would still get a standing ovation because of the rapport that we have. But I think all of that is just, it's very intentional. It costs a lot of money to build these resources and be in front of people and all of that. But when you can change your mindset to culture is cadence, and that cadence is what builds the relationship, because what is culture? It's the relationship that you have. They will go to fight for you knowing that I'll go to fight for them, but they don't believe it if I only show up 4 times a year. So I always say, hey, culture is cadence, and how can I keep staying in that cadence?
That's great. I want to ask you another question about advice for agents, and you talk to thousands of them. What is a hard truth that most agents don't want to hear when you have these conversations?
So I'm a big fan of frameworks. And one of the frameworks that I love to use is that, so if I was talking to an agent, say her name was Jenny, the framework that I overlay on her business is you need 3 things to succeed. You need opportunities, as in how do you fill the funnel? You need effort, because you got to go do something. And then you need skill. So I always am thinking, all right, is this an opportunities problem for Jenny to grow her business? Is it an effort problem where she doesn't have the time? Or is it a skill problem where she just doesn't have the right skills to do that? The hard truth is this. People often think it's a leads problem as an opportunities problem. And unfortunately, it's not. People often think it's an effort problem, saying, oh, if I spent more time, if I door knocked 4 hours a day, it will get good. But it's not, because I could door knock 4 hours a day and say dumb things at the door, and I would not be able to generate any leads. I believe that it is a skill problem for most agents. And the reason most agents, I'm so sorry to tell you guys this, you don't believe it, is because the number one reason why agents get in the real estate business is because they're drivers, they're high Ds, and they already have natural charisma. And agents have this ability to operationalize charisma and sell with charisma. So they have a very charisma focused business. And so they're like, just get me in front of somebody and I can sell them, right? They have this charisma focused business. And if they don't get the deal, they're like, oh yeah, she was going with his brother, or somebody else discounted the deal, or they'll make it's easy to make the excuses. But in effect, if an agent can just take control and say, wow, if I can just work on my skill, and even if I have a bad day, even if I have no charisma, I can win. That's when good things happen. There's nothing like, I'd say a skilled agent would outperform a charismatic agent 10-1. And it's insane how that works. Like, I've gone into appointments that I have no marketplace knowledge. It's completely different market, completely cold. And how can I beat a incumbent in the market agent? And that's, I think a lot of it is because of skill. And the skill is not just what you say and how you say it, but also the proof that you can show by using the platform tools like Luxury Presence, et cetera. So I would offer that if an agent should be thinking, if I had no charisma, how much would I have to work on my skill? And that is the level of skill that you need, because then you're completely unbeatable. And it's not just memorizing a script, it's knowing how to position each of the ideas, how to position the objection handling, how to show the proof. The skill is so important. And then, so I think charisma generating agents will win a little bit, but they will have a lot of up and down in their income. Skill-based agents will have a lot more of a sustainable, manageable, growth-oriented business. And so I always say, hey, can you have more skill than me? Can you have more skill than, assuming you had no charisma, what would you do? And I think if as soon as an agent accepts that, it like completely will change their life.
Let's say you're talking to an agent who has the skill, who has the effort, but they lack opportunities. What are 3 things you would tell them for how to get more opportunities?
Yeah, totally good. So the easiest way is, and a lot of people don't like to listen to the easiest way, if you have good work ethic, which is effort, if you have good skill, which is your capability, the easiest way to like start putting points on the board is to join a team. Easiest way, because teams are like, wait a minute, Malti's awesome. He shows up at 8, he leaves at 5, he's nonstop, he has the skill, he can just work our leads and he can crush it. Because all you're saying is, hey, can I get their lead flow to employ my skill associated with it? So the easiest way is to join a team. The second way is to get some kind of mentor. And then you tell the mentor, hey, listen, how do you do your business? Can I just shadow you? Can you show me what you do? I'll give you a portion of my deals. Just get me kind of up and running. So that would be kind of number 2. The third, I think that coaches are really good, but I don't think everybody is a good coach. So a lot of times what I tell people is, when you talk to a coach, you should ask them 2 questions. Question number 1 is, give me an example of how you've taken somebody from where I am to where they want to go, and can I talk to that person? And the second is, hey, what system do you have in place that I can learn that will get me there? Because some coaches are scaling coaches, some coaches are SOI coaches, some coaches are farming coaches, some coaches are branding coaches. Like, every coach is not the right fit. So that way you hire the right person to kind of get you there. Those are kind of like 3 big things. I'll give you a 4th easy idea. I think that there is an insane amount of knowledge and power and lead generation on free social platforms right now. And my favorite thing is, if I was in a local market, I would go and talk to the 5 to 10 local businesses that have big social media presences, not just popular ones that have big media. And they say to them, hey, let me interview you on Instagram Live, and then have that kind of promote and reach our audiences. Or, hey, are you cool giving me a 10% discount to your pizza store? I will email that out to my database. That way I can get you more notoriety. As soon as you do that, they start to tag you, they start to promote you, they start to do all of that. And it's so easy, because I call this using other people's audiences, right? But if you do it no one stopped to say, everyone's like, hey, I'm going to go to the local pub, but the local pub only has 200 followers on Instagram. Instead, if you go to the pooled guy who like services all the people there and is using Instagram a lot and he has 14,000 followers on Instagram, I would much rather collab with the pool guy than the local pizza store. And so finding the right high media influencers in your market and like doing a lot more collab with them, because they're also getting a lot of inbound. And if they can help you generate more opportunities, you get free opportunities for the collaboration.
Yeah, you get the referral network locally. You get the content, which you can put on your website. Ideally, you ask them for a backlink to that content. Now your SEO is growing as a result. You're hitting, three birds with one stone on that.
Yeah, exactly right.
You mentioned personal branding and how important it is. And I absolutely believe that we are in a time where the business owner or leader has to be visible to maximize what you're doing in terms of branding and marketing. At what point in a real estate agent's career would you say, is it worth focusing on building the personal brand?
I that's a really tough question, but I'll give you an easier answer. It's the same answer as what's the best time to plant a tree, right? Best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. The sooner we do that, the better. I always ask people the question, hey, assume tomorrow that Oprah tweeted you out or made a post about you. What would happen to your business? It would grow. It would crush, right? And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to focus on like, why can't we build that brand? Why don't we start right now? Because it's going to take some time. And the hardest part about building a personal brand is thinking that it's going to be ready tomorrow. This is a 10-year exercise, and this is a stay in commitment for the 10 years. You mentioned something really powerful. You said, hey, when you have a personal brand, conversion becomes significantly easier. And so think about it this way, right? If Ryan Serhant, I think Ryan has probably, in the real estate business right now, Ryan has the number one personal brand. And so if Ryan Serhant walked into a living room for a listing appointment in New York City, because of his brand, there's no conversion problem. It's already like they've already said yes before he walked in the living room. And I think that's insanely, just knowing that is insanely powerful. I have a couple of friends who are local market kind of experts. And when they walk in, they're like celebrities when they walk in. And so it dramatically helps conversion. So you can actually have less skill and a bigger brand, and conversion becomes significantly easier. A lot of people tell me they think that, hey, I've built this brand over time. I don't get any lead flow from it, or it's not generating any business. I would offer to think about it a little differently. Brand dramatically will help conversion and open a lot of doors. Brand's not just going to be an inbound for lead gen all the time, but it allows you to make conversion significantly easier. So the problem that most people don't see is the conversion problem, not the lead gen problem. So if we can get more folks focused on their personal brand as to, hey, why in this marketplace should I talk to Malti or Sharran? That's really good. And the greatest part though is there's no saturation in each market. I will tell you right now, I could look at almost every market in the US, and there's probably very few local brands in that market from an agent perspective. And I think there's like being the digital mayor of your town. So there's so much opportunity. And I don't know if you would advise this, but I always tell folks, so super tactical thing to do. I tell folks in their local market, if you post 5 videos, 1 video a day for 5 days in your local market, maybe about the market, about what's happening, what have you, and then you see which video performed, well, there's going to be one that outperforms all of the others in some way. That means that the algorithm is telling you that people like this. So what I tell folks is do your first 5 to 10 videos for the week, take the one that outperformed and put like small budget dollars behind it, as in $1 a day behind it. So now you're saying to the algorithm, hey, the creative is already working. The message is already resonating. I know this works. Let me put a little bit of dollars behind this and have more people see what everyone already likes. And if you just did that week after week, month after month, you will be unbeatable in your marketplace for a very, very low investment.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We do this constantly in our marketing team, taking our highest performing organic content, giving it to our paid ads team and say, hey, this would be the great next creative for our paid media. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see agents make when it comes to their marketing?
A lot of it is based on kind of the shock and awe, smoke and mirrors type stuff, saying, hey, look at this. I got a digital video booklet. I'm like, that looks good. It has your face on it. You sent it out. Cool. But what else did you do with it? Right. And so I'm not saying that the digital video booklet is bad, or I'm not saying that the shock and awe box is bad. A lot of these marketing strategies in alone of itself, they're independently not useful. So if just because someone signs up for the luxury presence ecosystem doesn't mean they win. You got to now drive traffic to it. You got to show people about it. You got to kind of use it. You got to use the samurai sword, right? Like having the sword is not enough. You got to use the sword in some way. And so I'm not, the thing that I see is, hey, I'm going to sign up for Zillow. I'm going to get the leads, and then just going to complain that I got these leads. And these leads are bad, but you don't realize that you actually got to have the skill to work them. Or, hey, I got this great website, but no one's going to it. I'm like, well, no, like you got to like build a brand to send people to the site so you can actually get better conversion. So a lot of times, I don't think there's a marketing mistake. I think that people think that there's a silver bullet for everything when they say, hey, I'm just going to go get that thing and that thing will solve all my problems. But that's not the case. There seems to be a sequence of things that need to get done. And when people get like a engineer sequence like mentality and they treat marketing as a science experiment every time, you start to feel a lot more into it. So I would offer to people, if something is not working, that means something before and after is not working, not that thing. And that gives me, so when someone tells me Zillow doesn't work, and I'm like, that's interesting. Tell me about your conversion script. Oh, you don't have one. That's why the lead's not working, right? So whenever you feel like something's not working, I would ask the question, what happens before and what happens after, and see if those things are broken, because that gives you a lot more kind of a bird's eye view as to what actually happening.
Yeah, well said. Before we finish this conversation, I would love to ask you about your journey from India to the US. I came to the US from Germany when I was 19 years old. So I'm always interested in the stories of other immigrants to come here and build a business. And I'd love to hear what that story is for you.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you, brings a lot of tears to my eyes every time I kind of think about it. So I was born in India, and I'm the only child. My parents realized that something was not okay, and they were right. Like I was getting bullied and beaten in school, and but it's not something that you go home and tell your parents. It was not a, socially acceptable thing to say that I just got beaten in the locker rooms. But my parents knew that something was not right, and so uh, we were not, we were not a trust fund baby or anything like that. So my parents sold everything that they owned and to send me to the US when I was 16. I remember my dad, he had a scooter, and his scooter was his only mode of transportation. My dad sold his scooter to buy me a plane ticket. And so my parents literally sacrificed everything to give me a better life in the US. And when I got here, I felt this sense of responsibility, saying that, man, somebody like my parents sacrificed everything for me to be here. They moved in with my aunt and uncle to like live there to make sure I have a better life. I can't squander this. My first job was scrubbing toilets, and and I realized pretty quickly that it was a respectable thing to do. And I'll give you a crazy story, Malti. When I got here, my English was mediocre. Like I could understand fine, but I had a really thick accent and all of that. And I was talking to this head janitor who I was working for, like scrubbing toilets. And he said to me, he's like, dude, you're a really funny guy, but I can't understand you. And I said, well, I don't know what to do. And he said, well, go to the library and ask for these accent tapes. And maybe if you listen to them while you're scrubbing toilets, like 5 to 6 hours a day, you'll just get better. And I was like, that's a great idea. So I go to the library and I ask for these accent tapes. And the librarian was like, wait a minute, I don't have any English accent tapes. You're in the US, like talk to other people. But I have French accent tapes, I have German accent tapes, I have Italian accent tapes, but not English accent tapes. And I was like, well, that doesn't work. She's like, well, I have a better idea. Let me give you a book on tape. Just listen to people, like a book on tape. So she gave me a book on tape, and I was like, I don't care what it is. I just want to listen so I can work on my language skills. Well, the book she gave me was Tony Robbins' Personal Power. And so I start scrubbing these toilets, and all I'm listening to for 6 hours a day, every single day, is Tony Robbins' Personal Power. So the interesting part about that is, and as you know, Tony, he yells, right? He yells constantly. His book is him yelling, which is why the way I speak English is I yell, because I learned how to speak English yelling, and I had no other kind of way of thinking about it. So my wife will always be like, slow down. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like this is how I learned how to speak. But after the first couple of times, with words, etc., I got better. But then the personal growth content actually kicked in. It's like, hey, how you think about the world changes your life. Your commitment is important. How you manage your state and energy is important. How you show up with generosity is really great. How do you find the right belief system? That's important. So it took me originally finding a book on tape to work on my language skills. But I could have gotten any old novel, but the world gave me Tony Robbins' Personal Power at a time that I needed it the most. And that started me on this journey of like really working on my skills, myself, my mindset, et cetera. So that personal gift, I could never, like, somebody was looking over me and giving me this gift, and makes you believe in a divine power a lot of ways, that nothing is by accident. And I will tell you that moment is what gave me all of this, where I was in my head between midnight and 5 a.m. scrubbing toilets, listening to Tony Robbins' Personal Power for like 30, 40 days, the same book over and over. And you cannot replace that with anything else. And that was a really big turning point for me, which gave me a chance to say, hey, I can go take on more risk. I can go serve more people. I can go be a better version of myself. And without that, I don't think my life would have gone a completely different direction.
That is an amazing and inspiring story, and a great note to end our conversation on. Before we jump off, are there any projects or upcoming launches, anything that you're particularly excited about that you want to share with people?
Yeah, I'll tell you two things. I haven't shared this publicly before. So thing number one is that our team at Real, we're working very, very hard on this one big exercise of wrapping everything behind an AI umbrella. And a big part of that is us saying, hey, we're building an AI first company in a lot of ways, because, and I'll give you the truth, I bet your clients are feeling this too. Hey, I have this question, where do I go? I have this idea, where do I go? And a brokerage our size, there's so many different places to go to get so many different things. And so when someone has a question of, hey, how do I do geographic farming? They're like, well, where should I go search for this? And so we're trying to build everything behind this AI interface, and ingesting all this info into AI takes a lot of time. So I'm super excited that you will see this at Rise this year, where we're launching a AI first approach to everything, which I'm super, super excited about. And we have a lot of data behind it, because it's a very data driven thing. So I'm excited for agents to make their lives easier, because they can have one interface for everything. So that's kind of number one. The second is I may need your help with this one. So it gives me a chance to ask for this. There is so much from a sales skill perspective that our industry has seen that is ninja selling, aggressive selling. Like, here's these amazing scripts that you can have. Like, hey, 10 days of pain, like, all of that. And I've realized that all of these what to say sales methodologies are lacking one thing. And I think that they're lacking kindness, because nobody wants to be sold anything. They want to buy, they just don't want to be sold anything hard. And I think a kind salesperson, or at least felt that way, is really powerful. So I've been working on this project called Kind Selling. And the idea is, how do you take and organize these age-old kind of sales methodologies, these scripting, these sales tactics, these techniques, and reorient them to a kinder way of presenting them, so that it doesn't drive sales resistance. So instead of saying, hey, who's your agent? Or instead of saying, are you currently working with an agent? Both of those is forcing judgment and having them respond to something. Instead, could you say, hey, Malti, has anyone taken the time to sit down and walk you through what it takes to buy a home in today's market? That is way better than saying, who's your agent? So I've been working on this idea of, like, how do I put together a fully open source, fully free, not looking to charge any of this, a fully scalable, kind selling system for all service professionals. And I want to get that out in the marketplace. So I'm kind of building and growing that, not trying to monetize it anyway, but give everybody a different system to work with, if that resonates with them.
It sounds great. How can I help?
Hey, I think we can get it in the hands of all your clients first. It's totally free. So get it in the hands of all your clients first, see if they like it.
That's great. Thank you so much for the time, Sharran. That was an awesome conversation, and I really, really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, man, thank you for having me.
And with that, we have reached the end of another episode of the Presence Podcast. Thank you all for listening. Remember to follow or subscribe to the Presence Podcast on your favorite podcasting platform to stay updated on our latest episodes. If you enjoyed today's discussion, please leave us a rating or review. It helps more people find our show. Thank you for tuning in. Join us next time for more insightful conversations on the Presence Podcast. Until then, stay informed, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.